Hey YouTube, it's Guy. Today on the table, I've got two watches, obviously, a Rolex Explorer and a Hamilton Khaki Field. I thought it would be fun to do a little side-by-side comparison of these somewhat similar watches. Just kind of compare and contrast, talk about some of the differences, some of the similarities, not the least of which being the disparity in price difference and dollar per value, where do I think the money is best spent, amongst other topics. But yeah, like I said, what we have here on the left is a Rolex Explorer reference 214270. On the right, we have a Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic 38mm. These are both two of my very favorite watches from an aesthetic point of view. I think that the overall design, everything from the dial to the case, the entire presentation, I think they're both gorgeous, beautiful, bordering on perfect watches. Now, if you saw my previous review on both of these watches, they've both previously been reviewed individually, you'll know that I don't think that they're perfect in all regards. Both of them have problems. The problems may feel, to me anyway, a little more glaring in the Explorer than maybe in the Hamilton, just because of the gigantic price disparity. And, let's talk about price real quick. The Hamilton Khaki Field Automatic has a retail price of $550 to $600, somewhere in that ballpark. It can be had for less than that, of course, at actual retail. If you were to purchase from an AD, I suspect you'd be in the $500 ballpark. Gray market, you're going to be in the $375 to $400 ballpark. Now, on the Rolex, MSRP is $6,550. Again, those prices, you can do much better on price. From an authorized dealer, you should be able to get at least 10% off, maybe a hair more, so, $5,800, $5,900, under $6,000. Gray market, you could do even better, probably $5,500, maybe in that ballpark. And then, of course, you could get either of these secondhand. I'm sure you could find the Explorer $5,000 secondhand. And I'm sure you could find the Hamilton for, a few, maybe $300 secondhand. Regardless, they are drastically different in price, regardless of what avenue or channel you decide to go through to purchase one. So, like I said, when we talk about the flaws on the Rolex, as in my previous full-length review, my standard, my expectation is going to be much higher than it is for the Hamilton. That said, again, they're both excellent watches. I mean, aesthetically, I think they're perfect. Let me go ahead and pull them up to the camera here and just kind of take a close look at them side by side and see, we'll talk about similarities and differences. Obviously, these are both steel cased. Let's call them both field watches. And I suppose we could debate, is the Rolex a field watch? I don't know. I mean, the Hamilton is clearly a field watch. I think field watches typically are described as a watch that has a black dial, it has large legible numbers, both Arabic numerals, both the 12 o'clock scale and the 24-hour scale. Now, the Hamilton also has a date complication, which is currently covered up by the minute hand, but we'll see that shortly. The Rolex, on the other hand, does not have a full array, I guess, for lack of a better term, a full array of indexes. Indices. It just has the 369 and then baton markers for the other hours. That said, what genre is the Rolex if it's not a field watch? I don't really know. It's certainly not a dive watch. It's not a dress watch. It's not a pilot's watch. It's, in my mind, while it's not maybe the very stereotypical style design that you would find in a field watch, it's an outdoor, it's an adventure watch. It's heritage, or what's the word I'm looking for? provenance, maybe, I don't know, well, heritage is a good enough word, is rooted in, expeditions, mountaineering, adventuring. I mean, for all intents and purposes, let's just say they're both field watches, although I know there would be a lot of debate over whether or not this Rolex is in fact a field watch. That said, similarities again, they're both steel cases, they both have black dials, very legible, and that's probably the biggest thing about a field watch is, it has to have a very legible dial, easy to read, clear handset, all of that stuff. They both have a polished bezel. The Rolex features more polishing on the sides of the cases, or on the side of the case. The Hamilton has a much bigger crown than the Rolex, as you can see there. But, I mean, they're similar. 38 millimeters on the Hamilton for the case diameter versus 39 millimeters on the Rolex. They both have 20 millimeter lugs. They both have metal bracelets. So, there's a lot of similarities here. And I think a person could probably say to themselves, I want a quote-unquote field watch, or an adventure watch, something like this Rolex. Could I substitute a Hamilton in its place and still be just as happy? I mean, yeah, you probably could. It's, if you don't want to spend the money. But there's a lot more quality in the Rolex than there is in the Hamilton from a manufacturing perspective. Not the least of which, and it's funny, I'm going to say this, the bracelet on the Rolex is much higher quality than the bracelet on the Hamilton. However, I don't particularly find the bracelet on the Rolex to be very comfortable on the wrist, whereas the bracelet on the Hamilton I find to be very comfortable on the wrist. So, go figure. It's a much higher quality. You can tell the fit and finishing and the construction, the materials, everything. You can tell just by holding it in your hand that the bracelet on this Rolex is significantly higher quality. Just there's a weight to it. It's hard to describe, but without a doubt, the quality is leaps and bounds higher than the bracelet on the Hamilton. However, again, I find the bracelet on the Hamilton to be more comfortable. I can't really explain why that is. I think it probably could have something to do with this extremely large amount of taper on the Rolex bracelet, which comes down to 15 millimeters. And I think the Hamilton has a little bit of taper. It's almost imperceptible, but I think there's a little bit of taper, but it's not nearly as narrow down here towards the buckle or clasp end. And what happens is you get a lot more stress over a much smaller area on your wrist, and it kind of. And this Rolex is heavier, not a ton, it's 11, 12 grams, something like that. But distributing that weight over this smaller amount of area, I think it just puts more stress and discomfort on my wrist personally. Your mileage may vary. I don't know what to say. And I just find it to be not a particularly comfortable watch. Now, in discussing the bracelets, we can look at the clasps. And again, the Rolex clasp is leaps and bounds better than the Hamilton clasp. The Hamilton clasp just has 2 little push button deployments on the side, and the Rolex has the oyster lock fold over, and once opened, there's no buttons. This is just a hinged clasp. The machining, the materials, the engineering, everything about the clasp on the Rolex is just outrageously higher quality. The Hamilton isn't the cheap, pressed metal that you see on lower end watches, and the folding elbow portion is nice machined material as well. But it's just lighter weight. You can just tell it's quality wise, it's not even close to what you get from the clasp on the Rolex. But again, Hamilton's more comfortable on my wrist. It feels almost silly to say that, but I don't want to say I enjoy wearing it more, but what I want to say is it's just more comfortable. As far as the dial designs, which one do I prefer? This is going to be just straight up opinions. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so it's not like you're going to agree or disagree with me necessarily, and you're not right or wrong if you do or don't. I think that the dial design on the Rolex is perfect, absolutely 100% perfect, and that's what made me fall in love and obsess with this watch and why I wanted to own one for months and months, and I mean probably more like well over a year. The dial, the layout, the design, everything about it, it's just fantastic. The Hamilton's is very good too. I like it very much, very, very much. But side by side, when we're talking about the aesthetics of these two watches, the Rolex is a little bit better. For me. The case, again, it's just everything on the Rolex is a notch above the polishing, the fit, the finish, with probably one little caveat in that, as I had discussed in my full feature-length Rolex Explorer review, it is the 904L stainless steel that is made, this case is made of. It scratches like crazy. I mean, I am very careful with all of my watches, and almost all of my watches are basically unblemished. I have scratches that pop up on this Rolex. I don't even know where they came from. It's not like I did anything. It's, you know what I mean? I look down one day and it's like, oh, there's another little mark. There's another little nick. There's another little scratch. Where did that even come from? I have no idea. It's not like I banged it or did anything to it. It's weird. Whereas I believe this is just 316L stainless steel. I mean, nothing. It looks like the day I bought it still. So while, yeah, this Rolex is higher quality materials and it's much nicer looking, keeping it that way is going to be much more of a challenge. It's like you look at this watch sideways and it gets a scratch. A lot of people don't care about that. They're going to say, so what? So it's a tool watch. It's a field watch. It's made to be worn. It's going to get scratches. Don't cry about it. Blah blah blah. If that's your opinion on how you want to treat your watches, if you don't care if they get scratched up or scuffed up or marked up, more power to you. That is completely well within your rights to have that opinion. However, someone that has the opinion that they want to keep their watches or cars or whatever, any possession, in as nice a condition as possible, that's their right as well. And we can't criticize one another for our opinions. And be logical thinking human beings. It's an opinion. No, there is no right or wrong. So let's talk a little bit about the movements and the mechanics, if you will, accuracy, precision, things like that. The Hamilton, of course, has a display window on the back, and we can see, probably be a little bit hard to get a nice angle there. We can see it's got the Hamilton H10 movement. It's got the skeletonized H on the rotor there. Now, of course, the Rolex case back is just a solid case back, so we can't. There's nothing to see there. But regardless, the movements on these are significantly different. On the Hamilton movement, we have an 80-hour power reserve, which is pretty outstanding for a mechanical watch, honestly. It's a recent update to the movement that gave us that long power reserve, so wind it up, and if we set it down on Friday, like Monday morning when we pick it up to go to work, it's still going to be running. That's excellent. On the other hand, the Rolex has a 48-hour power reserve. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, anything over 40 hours is plenty in my opinion. So it's not like having only the 48-hour power reserve is a negative. And I've timed mine. It's more like 51 or 52 hours. Over time, though, will the mainspring kind of wear out a little bit and fall into that 48-hour specification range? Yeah, quite likely. Who knows how it'll run in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years when it's ready for a service. But, these are both relatively new watches, and out of the boxes, 48-hour plus, 80-hour plus. The Hamilton vibrations per hour, beats per hour, is lower than the Rolex's 21,600 versus 28,800. Does that matter? Not to me, not at all. Not even a minor consideration. If it matters to you, though, that's cool. I mean, if you like the higher beat rate of the Rolex, that's fine. It's your prerogative. For me, it's irrelevant, though. I don't really care. I don't know if you can tell on the camera here side by side. Does the Rolex secondhand look substantially smoother running than the Hamilton's? I mean, I don't know if it'll come through on video very well because we're only filming at 30 frames per second, but in person, like, I can tell a difference, but it's so subtle. I just don't care. You know what I mean? But again, if you're of the opinion that that's a cool feature for something that you want a 28.8 instead of a 21.6. Hey, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, they're all opinions and preferences and what turns you on, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, as far as accuracy, that's, again, another hotly debated topic I have recently found out on the internet. The Rolex is advertised to come in at plus or minus 2 seconds per day. The Hamilton doesn't really have an official advertised spec that I could find, but I did email their customer service and ask them what kind of accuracy should I expect out of this watch, and they told me between -10 and plus 15. So plus or minus 2 on the Rolex, -10 to plus 15 on the Hamilton. Big difference, right? Now here's the funny thing. This Hamilton is more accurate than this Rolex. On the wrist, if I wear either one of these watches for, we'll say 14 hours a day, 14 to 16, and we rest it in my watch case dial up for the remaining 8 to 10 hours a day, what kind of actual accuracy do I get? On the Rolex, it runs at approximately plus 3.5 seconds per day, between 3.5 and a 4. And I tested this over the course of several weeks, taking notes and doing a running average. Very consistent. Every time I looked at it, it was very, very consistent. On the other hand, the Hamilton, not as consistent. Some days a little bit faster, some days a little bit slower, but the accuracy that I get on this on average is 1 second per day fast. Some days it's like 0.75, 0.8, you know, if I run it over the course of several weeks and do the math. Some days it's more closer to like 1.5. And the reason is because the positional variance on these, if I put them on my time grapher, is substantially different. For example, running the Hamilton dial down, it's very slow, like significantly slow, like -10 seconds per day. Whereas a dial up, it's almost dead on. It might be +1 or +2. Now this watch doesn't spend much time at all with the dial facing down towards the ground. However, my point is that the positional variance on this Hamilton is significant, whereas the positional variance on the Rolex is negligible. On my time grapher, no matter what position I put it in, it's got a very, very tight reading. So the Hamilton's more accurate, but I still would say that the Rolex's movement is better, despite the fact that this particular example is a little less accurate than this Hamilton. If we were to buy or test, because we're not going to buy them, but if we were able to test 100 Rolexes versus 100 Hamiltons over the course of that, I mean, 9 out of 10, and if it's not 9 out of 10, it's probably 8 out of 10 Rolexes are going to be much more accurate than the Hamilton. This is actually my second Hamilton. The one that I used to own ran, I don't remember if it was fast or slow, but it was around 6 seconds per day. So, you know, this one's like 1 second per day fast, and the other one was like 6 seconds or 7 seconds per day slow. So just in those two examples, a pretty broad range of differences, whereas this has been my only Rolex. However, I'm very confident in guessing that they're all going to have very tight tolerances in the regards of accuracy and precision. So, yeah, while this one happens to be a little bit more accurate, I don't think that's like something that we can really take to the bank and say, oh, the Hamilton's better. I just got lucky with this Hamilton, I think, is the moral of the story. So yeah, you know, I just wanted to, like I said, show you these watches side by side, talk about them a little bit. I mean, I could go on and on for hours probably, but nobody wants to watch that. But suffice to say that there are a lot of similarities between these two watches, and there are a lot of differences. The big question people are probably going to wonder is let's say this is $500, let's say this is $5,000. It's in those ballparks anyway, right? Is the $500 watch 10 times less good than the $5,000 watch? Is the $5,000 watch 10 times better than the $500 watch? And here's my answer. well, it depends on how I worded that question. Let me reword the question. Is the $5,000 watch 10 times better than the $500 watch? Absolutely not. That's my answer. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like, this $500 watch is a really, really nice watch. No doubt about it. And this $5,000 watch is a really, really nice watch too. But I don't think that it's really worth all of the difference in price. It's just my opinion. You're probably gonna have people that come in and say, I'm crazy, I'm stupid, I don't know what I'm talking about, and everything under the sun. You know, okay, I guess it is what it is. In my opinion, though, this Rolex is not 10 times better than this Hamilton. It's a lot better, there's no doubt about it. Quality and quality of materials, you know, I mean, it's better. I'm not gonna lie. I just don't think that it is worth the asking price relative to this $500 watch. And we could even look at this in another angle and say, is this $500 Hamilton really worth $500 or $400 or what, you know, whatever? No, probably not. I mean, I have a $100 Seiko field watch, the SNZ G13. This Hamilton is not 5 times better than that watch, in my opinion. So, moral of the story is they're both overpriced. You're paying for marketing, you're paying for the name, you're paying for the good feelings that you get when you wear a Rolex or when you wear a Hamilton or whatever. You know what I mean? That's my opinion anyway. But they are both very, very good watches. And you would not be wrong to go with either of them. You know, just my 2 cents. So I guess I'm going to call this video quits. Again, I could talk about the similarities and the differences between these two watches till the cows come home. I don't really want to have an hour-long video here. I just want to do something for 15 to 20 minutes. Kind of show them side by side. Two watches that feature designs that I think are more or less perfect, timeless, fantastic, you know, just excellently designed watches. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in and checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in helping out the channel, down in the notes section below this video, I will have links to my social media accounts. I'm losing my train of thought here, I'm sorry. Social media accounts, be it Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course my Patreon. And if you want to become a Patreon and support the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Everything that goes into that comes back into buying more products to review. So, you know, it would be excellent to see more people sign up over there. I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate you guys coming and watching the video. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below. And I'll be back later this week with probably a review of that Seiko SNZ G13, the field watch that, again, I think is pretty similar to the Hamilton at a fifth of the price. And then eventually we'll probably do a comparison of those two watches. So, alright guys, take care, have a good one. Bye.